Okay, so with Hashem's help, let's jump back into our learning of Sefer Yichud HaShabbos. We've been learning about Lichadodi, and the shir that we had was speaking about the concept of Boi Chala Shabbos Malkusa. We're up to that stanza, the very final stanza. Then we'll have a few shiurim on Mizmor Shir Liyam HaShabbos, and we'll carry on. We'll see what we'll do next. So let's jump into this teaching, and we're up to the first column, the heading HaShabbos Me'ein Olam Haba. And if you remember last time, we were speaking about the etzem relationship, the essential bond that a Jew is meant to feel with HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Shabbos. We gave the Mishalim, the parable of a person, right? If you remember, a person who, that their dad comes to visit them after they get married, and then afterwards the dad says, here, I want to pay for the meal. And it's like a terrible feeling because there's nothing else that you want more than the relationship. You don't want your father to pay for the meal. Like, it's not a transactional relationship. It's not a business thing. This is, you're not a restaurant. This is a connection that's so much deeper. And he's discussing that's really what Shabbos is meant to be for us. What we're looking forward to, what we're meant to feel on Shabbos, is just the primary essence of our relationship with the Master of heaven and earth. So he says, this idea of Shabbos being a little bit me'ein, a little taste of Olam Haba, of a new reality, the new world, the world to come. Yehudi is referring to Shala Asid Lavo, some futuristic reward, some different experience beyond what we're currently able to understand. Yehudi in Mavakesh Schara Gemul Me'ever La'etzem Hahem Tsa'is Began Eden B'makam Ba Yir Es Hanachas as Hanachas Rada Shapal Eitz La Hashem Yisbarach Mikol HaTorah U'Mitzvahs Sha'asa Ba'Olam Hazeh. The Jew is not davening for any schar gumul, for any kind of remuneration, for any kind of payment, or any kind of reward, me'ever beyond le'etzem ha'im sayis b'Gan Eden, just being in Gan Eden. Like, you don't need, it's not like, and then in Gan Eden you'll get reward. From this standpoint, there's no greater reward than just being there. And that's the greatest thing in the world. Just to be in such a place, you're already in seventh heaven. And there are many mishalim that we can give for such a thing. Like, again, I think we spoke about fireworks, Guy Fawkes, what's tonight? Halloween. Okay, so
and
Diwali. So a person who's at, like we said, parents of the chassan of the kala at the wedding aren't busy, thinking about the shmorg and the food and the band and the different things going on. They're just happy to be there, right? Their simcha comes from the etzem of the yichud, from the primary thing itself. And Shabbos is, again, in that sense, me'ein olam haba, is intended to be something like that, where a person will just be happy to be in that space, whatever that is. But also in this world, we're able to taste that reality a little bit that we've been describing, and that way that we're able to taste that reality is called Shekena Shabbos Me'ein Olam Haba. Thanks so much for coming. Shabbos is a little bit of a taste of Olam Haba. K'di Isa B'Taras HaSaid, which is brought in Kisvei Arizal, in the Zohar Kodesh and in the writings of the Ari, that on Shabbos is affected something called Nasa Ilui. There's going to be an aspect where all of our avodas Hashem during the week, in a certain sense, when Shabbos comes in, it's like everything rises. All of our tefillas, all of our tefillin, our tzitzis, our avodas, our midos tovos, our chesed, everything good that we're doing rises up on Shabbos Kodesh, which is an aspect of the world to come. It rises to a different place. The Yehudi and the Jew, the Jew who enters into the service of God following the path of Rabbi Nachman, Schus Yargan Leinu, who revealed this way of tmimus upshitas, of absolute simplicity, authenticity, vulnerability, without any big chachmas and sophistication, just the simplest consolidation of emotion down to the kernel, to the marrow, to the essence. Such a Jew, even on a spiritual level, forget about the physical delights of Shabbos, whatever those will be for that person. On a spiritual level, this person does not want anything. He's not busy getting excited about Shabbos or on Shabbos trying to tap into what Shabbos is, because he knows that I'll pee this Sefer and what he learned in this thing from the Arizal and this Ramak and this Mekubal, that something happens to the neshama, that I'm going to attain a certain madrega, and that whatever it is, that's not, all those things are true. And it's good to learn them, and we've been learning them the last 2 years. And this is the purpose of the Chabura, is to try to give us a deeper taste in all of this, obviously. But that's not the Iker. That's not the Yesod Hadvarim. Sas v'sameachu, from the standpoint again of Tmimus Upshitas, this Jew rejoices be'etzem heyoisai margish urotzi v'chavi be'heichal hamelech, because he's in the palace of the king. The person's not thinking about what the king is going to give and what the king, like we said, remember we learned about the prince who comes to the king, right, in contradistinction to a villager who's invited, and the villager is just blowing his mind over all the food and all the gold and the silver and the vessels and the royalty and the pomp and the ceremony. And the prince, that's not what the prince's focus is when he gets invited for an audience with the king. What his focus is, that he gets to spend some time with his father. That he gets some cherished time. His dad is so busy, and he sets aside time to sit with his father. It does not matter to him all these other things that would be the focus for a villager, for a simple person who comes in. It's a completely different focus. It's a completely different experience. And so Rav Kluger is saying that this is really what Shabbos is supposed to be. Person comes into Shabbos, sure, there's an inyan of Oneg Shabbos, and there's Kavod Shabbos, like we learned about. We had Shiurim on at the beginning of the series, and there are all these different aspects of the delicious food, and the day off, and the Shabbos Shluf, of course, and all the different aspects of what a person can access on Shabbos, but that's not the thing itself. The thing itself, the Me'ein Olam Haba, is just to be in Gan Eden. Forget about anything else that you're going to get in Gan Eden. Just to be there. Just to be in Shabbos. Without getting anything, without saying anything, without doing anything, without reaching any madrigas, just to be there. To know again, and largish, that he's hayosei margish, that he feels ratzui, deeply desired, v'chaviv, and beloved beheichal hamelech, in this place. Malkush al Olam, in the palace of the King of the world. B'yoidai, in his awareness, kama sha'ashuim, how much delight. Oilim lefanav yizbarach, is being elevated to Hashem, mikol pu'ula toiva sha'asa, from all of the good deeds that he did during the week, all the mitzvos, the Torah study, the tefillah, everything that rises up at the advent of Shabbos. Every positive holy thought, every little yearning to be a little bit better, any tiny little expression of the neshama that you had during the week goes up on Shabbos. That's what Shabbos is. It all goes up on Shabbos. And so again, from this standpoint, the joy comes from his realization in these moments of just how wonderful it is and how precious it is to be among those who can bring Shashuim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who are in a relationship with Hashem, and get one day a week, outside of all the physical and even spiritual delights that a person will experience on that day, just to share a day with the King of Kings. And that's what he calls over here, Tmimus Upshitos. This is simple. This is just the basic, bare bones element of what it means to be a Jew, accessing Shabbos. Then he says a very beautiful thing. Melech u'malka likapti bigdi v'tleh. This is a sentence from the Gemara in Pesachim, which we're going to see in a minute, which is a whole discussion over there about the minoi, about the selection and the designation of different animals for karbanos. And what happens if you send a servant and you wanted him to designate one carbon, he designates another carbon, and how does that work? And so he says like this, so me'ata, at this point, now that we've explained this, Ein ha'Yehudi mitzta'er al miyat iska b'Torah tefillah. When Shabbos comes in, now is not the time to be thinking to oneself, I wish I would have davened better this week. This week was very, very weak in my learning and how much time I was mevatel and all this. Because of whatever difficulties, obstacles, challenges the person had during the week. I think that, Ben, all you need to do is just click the thing. I think it will say to them downstairs, the door's open. I think so. It could also be the...
I unlocked it, push.
No, you need to turn the handle.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because right now, in this moment, is not a time for talking about all the things that could have gone better during your week. You're in the palace of the king. So what are you kvetching about? You're here. You've arrived. You're in. So it doesn't matter. All that stuff is not relevant in this moment. It doesn't mean it's irrelevant. Of course not irrelevant. Of course these are things that a person needs to think about and work on in the next week. Hopefully they'll commit to being better. But this is not the moment and this is not the place. Ki nimtzahu bebeis hamelech. Right now you're in the palace, you're in the throne room. And when a person sits at the table of the king, of the makom, of the makoma shel olam, you're not thinking about whether or not you ran out of cream cheese in your fridge. I mean, you're sitting at the table of the king. What are you worried about? That you have some personal lack in your life? It's not the Indian. You're sitting at the headquarters of plenty, the headquarters of what's the word? Not beyond plenty. Get on. Great to see you. Thanks for coming. The headquarters of wealth, sustenance is another word that I'm looking for that they use in like New Age when they're trying to tell people to manifest through thoughts. They want to have lives of, there's a word for it.
Meaningfulness?
No, not meaningful. No. Physical plenty, but there's a word for it. Abundance? Maybe that's what it is. Abundance. Yeah, there's a certain word that they use. You have to live a life of abundance, right? That a person wants to live. Thank you for coming. So you're sitting at the king's table, and maybe it's Shavuos morning, and it's full of all the most delicious dairy delights, and you're thinking to yourself whether you still have a little bit more cream cheese to scrape out of your plastic little thing that you got from Kosher Kingdom. You're sitting at the table of the king. Forget it. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Over there, it's not about how much, how little, how much do you eat? Do you eat enough? Do they have more? Maybe in the kitchen, you can ask for a second bowl of soup. What's second bowl of soup? They have infinite vats of soup and pots and huge tanks of soup. What are you worried about? And this is the lashon in that Gemara over there. I'm not going to go into the Gemara now. It's a long thing. But this is the terminology in the Gemara. Is anything lacking in the house of the king? Is there any makom when a person's standing in the throne room of the king to start to think about chesroinus, which means, is there any place for a Jew to come into Shabbos and to think in some way about some lack in that person's physical or spiritual experience? It's not relevant from the standpoint of Shabbos Kodesh. And this point comes in the context of Gemara Maisa b'Melech u'Malka. There was a king and a queen that said to their servants, go out v'shachtu aleinu es haPesach. Go out and prepare for us the carbon Pesach. They made the shliach. V'yatzu, and they went out v'shachtu aleim shnei pesach. But they went and they shachted two different carbon Pesachs. Ba'u v'shalu es hamelech. And they came and they asked the king, okay, Amalahem, so he didn't know what to do. Which one should they use? So he said, go ask the queen. Maybe she had intention of a specific one. And she said, no, go and ask Rabbi Gamliel. They asked Rabbi Gamliel, and he said, over here is a new halacha. That usually you need to have a specific animal in mind, or it's a specific thing, and it cannot be another animal because people are makbid. I didn't want this one, I wanted this one. Reb Gamliel's chiddush in this particular case is that the halacha is different with regard to a king and a queen. Why? Because malka umelech, because a queen and a king, the daitan kala aleim yoichlu min harisha, and he says they don't care. It doesn't matter to them because they're not particular, because a king and a queen don't have to be particular because they have access to everything in the world. Klum chaser bebeis hamelech. See, he said by them that there's no kpeda, you can use anyone they want. Kala aleim yochlim and arisha, they just pick one of them, you can eat. Anan, but us, he says, for regular people, either of these wouldn't be good enough. Either of these would not qualify as having been designated as a carbon pesach. But for the king and the queen, it doesn't matter, because every animal is shaykh to them, because they're royalty. Umavur, and what the Gemara is essentially telling us is shezeu minig beis hamalucha. This is the minig, meaning this is the way the way that kings and queens conduct themselves. Sha'amnam yesh by machalim, because they of course have many foods, umadanim, and pleasures, but if in nichpad yosim called batei medina, more than any of the different houses in the country, ain't iskam be'ilu advarim, and so they don't get involved. Because it does not matter. They don't have to think about portions. They don't have to think about, because they don't care. Like Taisus points out, Melech u'Malka, Yeshlem Roiv Ma'adanim, they have so many different pleasures. But like Kapdim, Gedim, Tlem, Shaminim, Kachush, they don't care what kind of animal, they don't care if it's fat, if it's a little thin, they're not makbid. Doesn't matter to them. Because again, this Lashon, Klum Chaser Bebeis HaMelech. There's nothing lacking in the house of the king. Says Rav Kluger, Kazuhi hahargasha shel hayehudi keboya shel Shabbos Kodesh. This is what our consciousness should be, our thinking, when Shabbos Kodesh comes in. Shematzoi, a person should think that a person is found beheichal hamelech. You're currently standing at the table of the king, Shulchan Malachim. You're a person who's standing in the throne room. And therefore you're in a space of abundance. That's the word. Was that the word we said before? Abundance? Yeah. That's what it is. Excellent. Right? Abundance. We're in a space of abundance. So a Jew should genuinely feel, irrespective of what his week looked like, or irrespective of what the past month looked like, or the year or decade, it makes no difference. It comes Shabbos Kodesh for a conscious Jew, and this is what Chazal tell us we should feel. Ki ilu kol melachdecha asuya. We should consider it as if all of our work is done. And the Hasidic Sfarim are mechadish, that it doesn't just mean our practical work, like if a person had some spreadsheet he was in the middle of organizing, or some business deal he was in the middle of working on, put that aside, ki ilu, it's like it doesn't exist because it's finished, and then go get back to it after Shabbos. Say that tzaddikim, it means in ruchnius as well. It's a very radical thing. The Chazim Lublin says that even, and as he says, afilu bechefsei shamayim, kanoide b'sifrei chasidus, a Jew should feel Friday night, you're done, you're perfect, you're fine. Ki ilu kol melachtecha asuya. There's being revealed in the heart and soul of the Jew the essence to such an extent that all chisaron, all deficiency, is irrelevant in these moments. It's just not. It's not there. You're in the palace of the king. You're in the me'ein olam haba, where we won't need anything other than just the etzem being in Gan Eden to just be in Gan Eden and to experience paradise. This is what we should be feeling in our hearts and our minds. Shabbos comes in. You're there. There should be no impediment to our appreciation or connectivity to Shabbos, so much so that Chazal push it to the furthest extreme and say that even if a person served Avodah Zarah, like the dar of Enosh, Chazal say, keeps Shabbos, so anyway, there's nothing to worry about. Meaning, it's anyway all cleansed, but etzem, because Shabbos itself is tshuva, as we're going to learn, Shabbos Tashev, Mizmor Shirliyam Shabbos, other Merishon's Tshuva, the whole thing of Shabbos is just returning. It's coming back to our essence. It's coming back to that Nakuda which was never blemished. It has no deficiency. Lo yihibit aben b'Yakov, say the tzaddikim, the Oyev Yisrael from Apt, in a Sefer Oyev Yisrael, if you take a look on that pasuk, Lo yihibit aben b'Yakov, the tzaddik says, each and every Jew contains within him or herself a place that's called Yaakov. That's the essence of the Pintel Yid. That we're B'nai Yaakov, that's our root, and the Yaakov has the Shvatim of 70 members, and they go into Mitzrayim, and the whole Jewish nation evolves from them until today. He says there's a Pintel Yaakov, Pintel Yid, and in that place, Lo Hibit Avin B'Yaakov. In that place, Chet doesn't touch that place. That's a little bit what the Kuntris was about, right? We wrote about that. That there's a place which is beyond. It's beyond. It's mamish beyond. L'mala mitam v'das. It's what the Kadmonim already are explaining on the pasuk. Loi mirubchem chashak Hashem b'chem mikol ha'amim. It's not because you're the largest of all the nations that God chashak b'chem, that God desired you. Ki adam ha'ma'at mikol ha'amim, because you're the least of all the nations. Which on a simple level means physically, has different meanings. But the Svarim explain, you know what cheshek is? Cheshek is lemala mitam v'das. Cheshek is unconditional. It has nothing to do with rationality. This that a person has a cheshek for vanilla ice cream over chocolate ice cream. They cannot explain that to you. Nobody can explain that to you. Some people like peanut butter, some people don't. Some people like, so nobody can explain that. It just is. There's a place inside of you which is absolutely pure in the eyes of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. I have just as much Averis as the Italian, whatever it was, someone else. I'm not going to say Puerto Rican, I'm going to control myself, but somebody else down the block. So, I'm just the same as everybody else. I'm exactly the same. And the answer is, well, you might think so. And according to every available metric, you might be right, and all the Christians might be right that it would have been worthy for God to have supplanted us and canceled the covenant with us and made a new covenant because we were so terrible. Yeah, we admit. Nothing the Christians said about us is any worse than anything that the Nevi'im said about us. Yirmiyahu was pretty. We admit we haven't been perfect. We're not Mekshei Eiref, or we're not the easiest nation. We can't explain it, but God didn't desire you because you're the best. God desires you because He likes vanilla. Meaning to say God has a cheshek for you. The Sfarim say this. I'm not making this up. The Rishonim say this. Cheshek is l'mala mitam v'das. It just is. And that's the place of Yaakov Avinu inside. Lo hibit aven b'Yaakov. Shabbos is megala that nekuda. Ata echad v'shimcha echad umika amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. We are all you have. We're yours. You created the whole world for us to do a mission for the nations of the world. V'chuli v'chayda. But b'shvil Yisrael shenikru ureishis. We're yours. We're yours. And so from this standpoint, a person comes into Shabbos ki ilu kol malachtecha asuya. It's not a time to start thinking about deficiencies. It's not a time to start making consideration that if I had a really good week, so then on Shabbos I'm going to get this madrega. It's not about madrega. You're here. There's nothing to talk about. Every single Jew is invited. There's no question about it. I don't think that on Wednesday night, if somebody just happened to institute at the Kotel that people should go and sing Mizmor LeDavid and dance around like a bunch of crazies, that the whole Am Yisrael would be there and every single person would be able to feel at home and welcome. There's something about Friday night at the Kotel. There's something about Shabbos Kodesh that has nothing to do with deserving. The door is open. The door is open for every Yid to return to the essence of their soul. Going back inside that on this day, on this day, everybody can forget their burdens, this worldly burdens, their challenges, everything that's going on, and throw it off, all the burdens, and just embrace Hashem, just like a little child jumping into his parents' arm. That's it. That's Shabbos. Boy ikala Shabbos malkasa. So now we look at these words. At the end of L'chadodi, boy ikala. We invite the bride, Shabbos malkasa, the Shabbos queen. See, he says heartbreaking words that I think are familiar to us, just to one degree or another. He says, Achina Yehudi shemei advarim neskavim mikivshayna shel olam. He says, some Jew will read this. All of us sitting around the table are reading these words. We're hearing these words. We're learning these words. And we're reading Oidos Matzav Nafshis Yisrael B'Yom Shabbos Kodesh, about the incredible state of the Jewish soul as it's shining in its essence on Shabbos Kodesh. B'Agia Shabbos Oimenu Masmiya. And when Shabbos arrives, he stands and he's bewildered. Agam Bidi B'Rakasov. Could it be that these words are speaking about me? Hayitachin that I'm also included in this? Ha'im gam li yesh shaychis im arman hamalucha? Like, really? Even me? That even I am currently standing in the throne room of the king? Could it possibly be that I was lifted on eagle's wings and carried to this mini geula, to this mini olam haba, this mini gan eden, uka'isa ben melech, like the prince that we described earlier? Hey, makar ani b'miyat erki. I know what I struggle with. All of us know the things that we're challenged by, and the yeridas and the difficulties, and diburim elu shayachim rak tzadikim chasidim. And he thinks to himself, no, this is just speaking about tzadikim. Maybe tzadikim were standing in the palace of the king, not me. Lo ish hamoni upashit kamaini. Not somebody as simple and plebeian as myself. But again, we've revealed and we're discussing that this avoda, which is rooted again in the essential holiness of the collective Jewish soul that rises far beyond any individual and what they've chosen or not chosen to do with their particular manifestation of this soul, which is just a tiny little tipa minayam. The soul vis-a-vis the body is the body vis-a-vis the shoe, as Chazal say. The shoe is the body of the soul. Well, the body is the shoe of the soul. What shoes are to the body is to the soul. And if you think about it percentage-wise, like very little percentage of the body goes into the shoe. It's a teeny tiny percentage, maybe say 9%, 8% of the body, something like that. The body is infinitely beyond the shoe. We have no idea who we are. We think we're individuals. We walk around with a name and an identity and a past and a present, a future. And we also know that we're shaykh to the Jewish nation, and we're Yidden, and that's our religion, and that's our ethnicity, and our culture, and our tradition. So little of us is in us that it's remarkable. There is so little of us, like who we actually are, in our bodies. Because again, from the standpoint of each Jew channeling one collective soul, we're part of Nishmas Yisrael, which transcends the individual or a particular sect or section or segment of the Jewish community anywhere around the world, with whatever their ideology is, however conflicting they may seem to be on the surface with other ideologies, which are all part of one conversation that's all moving the world forward with a shakla of Ataria, just like that's how the Gemara works and that's how history works, back and forth in a system of like Hegelian, progress, step by step, and things move forward. Far beyond that, as it relates to this moment in time, we are part and parcel of the collective soul of the Jewish nation that is synonymous with the essential soul that filled the body of every single Jew who ever lived, from Avram Avinu, arguably Yaakov Avinu, the Shvatim, all the way until Mashiach comes. V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha mamish. The Talmud Devarim says He is you. He is you. I once saw this very, very fascinating. I don't think it has any grounding in Chazal, although it's quite interesting thought experiments. I'm not sure, I think it's useful in many ways. I don't think it's true. We don't have such a conception like this in Yiddishkeit, but I think it's useful. Where this guy did a YouTube video, a short film, and it's basically a soul. I can't remember the whole thing now. It's absolutely beautifully done. A soul goes up to heaven after 120. Herb Jack, thanks for joining. A soul goes up to heaven, and he's up there, and he meets God. I can't remember how God was represented, and it could be that this punct was the thing. I can't remember exactly. But basically the conversation goes back and forth until it's clarified that there's such a thing called reincarnations. Okay, so reincarnated, right? And then at some point in the process of the conversation, there's a conflict between the standard understanding of reincarnation, that there's one soul that goes up and then comes back down, and goes up and comes back down, from the standpoint of beyond time and space, where things can happen concurrently. So, like, where it's possible that he can be in this world, like, at the same time in two different bodies. And somehow through the process of the conversation, it's revealed that there is no one else that ever lived but him. And that everyone else in his life is actually him in a different incarnation, right? Which again, we don't have this hasaga so much in Chazal, but from the utmost standpoint, if you want to talk about Knesset Yisrael, in some sense it's true. So the message was, be kind, because you're not being. It's not a matter of being kind and not being kind to someone else. That's you, just in a different body, because he's in a parallel universe, and it's a wild thing. But from the standpoint of Yiddishkeit, it's mamish true. You are me, I am you, and the same is for all of us, and not just for us in the room and us in the shul and us in this community and city and country and continent. All of Am Yisrael, like throughout history, it's just one thing. It's one spirit. We are one entity. We are cells in one body, drops in one ocean, sparks of one torch. We are mosaics, the little squares that join together with all other Yidden, each group doing what it has to do, al pi shamayim, with all of the machlokes and the back and forth and the right and wrong and the whatever, and hopefully it should all be peaceful and with mutual respect and whatever. But all the different things, that's Hashem needs that. Hashem needs all of it. And it's ugly at the like at the seams. It's not neatly sewn. There's a push and a pull, and the push and the pull helps and aids both, so that whatever sides are arguing about whatever issue, there's a dialogic process of synthesis. And that's the way that history progresses. That's the way that things move closer and closer to tikkun. Just listening, just parenthetically, don't ask me why, how, when. I was listening to a lecture on Marxism, Stam, okay, which is an interesting thing. And the lecturer made an excellent point, which I think is oftentimes overlooked. With all of the devastating failures of Marxism throughout history, right, in terms of socialism and it not having worked, and philosophically being the possible foundation for a terrible degree of brutality, etc., 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 which happened, right, in communist countries and continues to happen, etc., etc. He said, Tachlis, without Marx putting a spotlight on the horrible moral ills of capitalism, it is not likely, he argues, that we would have banned child labor, that we would have made concessions for women, etc., and all these things. He said, like, with all the bad rep that Marx gets, again, rightly so, at the end of the day, wow, Haley, thank you so much for coming, for joining. Without Marx, don't judge me, you're walking in just the middle of a sentence, so this was not the whole shir, it's not on economics. But he said, without Marx, and without that voice as part of the cultural zeitgeist and the dialogue of modernity, and of the epochs and eras leading up to our time, it's possible that capitalism would still have really sharp corners. So we haven't figured out the best system yet, and much can be said about all of this. But I'm pointing out everything is bidiyuk where it needs to be, and it all contributes. And that's history, is a process of balance, of thesis, right, of an expression of an idea, antithesis, the pushback, and then between the push and pull, the shakla v'tarya. This is how Jewish law is produced. It's through shakla v'tarya. That's how hashkafic ideas are clarified throughout history. It's through a push and a pull. And this is how, as Hashem needs it. This is beautiful. But tachlis, we are all cogs in one machine. We are all one, and we've always been one, and we will ever be one. We are Knesset Yisrael. We are not individuals. So just one second, just to get to the end of this idea. See, he says, we're talking here about the avodah of Shabbos, which has nothing to do with an individual yid. Shabbos has nothing to do with it, with where you're holding and your personal avodas Hashem and your madrega and how your week was and how many nisyanis you overcame and how many you gave into and failed and how sad you feel or how happy you feel. It's not relevant. Lo shayach. So the panemius of understanding what it means, ki ilu kol malachtecha asuya, that doesn't just mean on a very basic financial level, employment level, that like whatever you were busy with during the week is done, it's finished, you don't have to think about it in jobs. According to the Hasidim, it means beruchnius. Why? Why is a Jew allowed to feel this way? That it doesn't matter what you were working on during the week. Ki ilu, you're finished. You're complete on Shabbos. Ki ilu kol malachtecha asuya. The answer is ba'aymek, that Shabbos is bringing out of the Jew such a deep essence of their identity that's bound up with the Kadosh Baruch Hu's cheshek, that we described as the word Yaakov in the pasuk Lo hibit aven bi Yaakov. That's a chelik of the essence of the Jew. That there's no inyan of aven there, because it's just shining purity and holiness and essence from God's perspective, which is the true perspective, which is reality. So on that level, you're already there, because on that level you are no longer you. With the external aspects of your identity, where taka there's deficiencies, and challenges and difficulty. It means that stuff is external. That stuff you're shedding. That stuff. Shabbos is the panemius. Shabbos is seen many times in a certain conception, not as the end of one week or even the beginning of another week, but actually as the center point. Right, and that's why we begin L'chun Ranana, for example, on Wednesday, right? Because Shabbos is the center point, that the 3 days before Shabbos are preparing ready for that Shabbos, and the 3 days after the Shabbos, Yom Rishon, Sheni, and Shlishi, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, are drawing their energy from the previous Shabbos. From this standpoint, Shabbos is quite literally the center. And from the standpoint, just Al Pi Kabbalah, of the spheres, the Igulim, without getting into the whole thing now, certain emanations from a Kadosh Baruch Hu that were emanated in a theological illustration of concentric circles, or keser, so to speak, is the first emanation, is the outermost, and then inside is chachma, and then bina, and then chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, chayid, yesod. The center point is malchus. That Shabbos is the spitz pintala, everything. It's what we refer to in davening when we say tachlis, ma'aseh shemayim v'aretz. It's the thing itself. Not all the steps that we take along the journey to get there, which all of our mistakes from the standpoint of tshuva, on the level of the individual, certainly on the level of the klal, are part and parcel of a process of tikkun, which is the side of David HaMelech, right? Which is the side of David Malka Meshicha. That's the secret of the Messianic spirit, the ability to look back and realize that everything that we went through, it's all part of a plan. And Mamela Ein Oid Movadai, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is everywhere and fills everything. And everything is His Ratzon. And Eishes Chayla, Teres Bala, everything is Him, everything is Him, everything is Him. But deeper than that, you're on Shabbos, you're already there. The process is complete. Me'ein olam haba. You're not in olam hazeh anymore. And all of the layers of olam hazeh that you're still experiencing, we need to shed. We need to shed, because Shabbos is accessing a place inside of ourselves that isn't us anymore. Meaning, it goes so far beyond the layer of the shoe we spoke about before, the shoe containing the whole body, that it gets into the essence. The Piyasetzner Rebbe says, I mentioned this in the context of the Shirim in the past. The Piyasetzner Rebbe, in the back of Sefer Chavos HaTalmidim, has a section called Shloshim Amarim. There are 3 very foundational essays on rudimentary Hasidic thought for older teenagers of his time, but it's applicable to all of us. And one of the Amarim is on Shabbos. And he has these beautiful lashonos there. I don't have the sefer in front of me. I don't have it here. I have it at home. But the tzaddik says that sometimes when he comes out of shul Friday night, he says he no longer sees individual Yidden, each with their own story, and their, like he gives this very beautiful imagery of like bent over, holding the burdens of their week and the and their struggles and pain and suffering. He just sees the collectivity of Am Yisrael. Sometimes, if you know this and you can know to be sensitive to it, you can try to feel this. You come out of shul Friday night, you don't see individual Jews. You see Am Yisrael. You see Knesset Yisrael Yeh Ben Zugech. You see the essential spirit of Am Yisrael rising beyond, above, that in relation to which All of this other stuff does not matter. It is irrelevant. Klum chaser bebeis hamelech. You're in the palace of the king. Ulefikach einanim dedes mimusage enosh. So it has nothing to do with chilasa emuna v'seifa emuna. The whole thing is that it begins with faith and ends with faith. And it has nothing to do with human conceptions. Man nidme, what appears le'ene basar adam, where a person's at. Elabestaklis mitzara kodesh baruch hu. Stop for a second to see yourself with your own eyes. And on Shabbos begin to see yourself with the eyes of Kudsha Barichu, with the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the eyes of the Master of the world. As all the tzaddikim taught us, this is how a Jew is supposed to look at himself on Shabbos. Because on Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't see you for you in the chitzaynis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees the Pintel Yid, Knesset Yisrael. Yeah, Rabben, you had a question.
So just go back a few steps. When you said so like the our body is to the soul, it's like a shoe is to the body.
That's right.
As opposed to what the clothes of the body is only covering a small amount.
Both. Because
like that,
both, meaning Chazal give both as an example. Right? Obviously, the malbush is to the body, what the body is to the soul, and that's also true. These are just mishalim.
Right,
but there's
yes.
Meaning there's a Ravcha de Milsa. There's something beneficial about this particular metaphor. Which, by the way, if you want a source for a look at the Orach Chaim HaKadosh on the mitzvah of Chalitza, where he explains that that's really what's happening with the shoe, because the whole thing is that having yibum is lahakim zera la'achiv. And the whole point is because of Al Pi Kabbalah that will bring back down the neshama of the nifter, and they'll have a child, and that will bring it back down, and that will hakim zer la'achiv. And so this, that she doesn't want to do that, quite literally means he is not willing to give a shoe to the soul of the brother, and that's the whole the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. He says that's the whole thing of chalitzas, taking off the shoe and spitting in the shoe. The whole thing has to do with this inyan, with the shoe, because it has to do with the guf and neshama. That's the pneumius of that. Otherwise, it's like a completely bizarre rituals. Ma kesher. Everything has depth. The benefit is the realization that not only is there a part of your soul that's beyond you, but from the standpoint of quantity, right, and to use that as a metaphor, the overwhelming majority of you, meaning the essence of what you actually are, is well beyond your body. Right. Again, we're not talking in height. So we're talking about exactly only the teeniest bit of what it means to be a yid, not Ben and not Yaakov. That's already low. We're talking about what we actually are, who we actually are, what we're connected to historically as Knesset Yisrael, what our mission is, what our kedusha is, what our capacities are, what is likened in a metaphor that just like the body rises well above the ankle that's in the shoe, so the essence of our identity as Yidden rises, unimaginably, unfathomably, very, very large percentage-wise, right, over and above our bodies. Okay, let's do one more paragraph. Ube'agia Erev Shabbos, so it comes Erev Shabbos, Misativ HaYehudi be'emuna. He says, wrap yourself in faith. Wrap yourself in this emunah. Something new is happening. It's not Friday night. It's the whole world is changing. Bisay kedushas yahadusay. I'm a Yid. I'm a Jew. It doesn't matter what I'm struggling with. I'm Bnei Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov. I'm eternal. K'diisa b'medrash. Tana Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Amr Shabbos l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like we just mentioned. Shabbos said HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ribono shel olam. Look, kulam yesh ben zug. Sunday has Monday again. Tuesday has Wednesday. Thursday has Friday. V'li ein ben zug. I don't have any mate. I don't have a partner. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know who will be your mate? You know who emerges on Shabbos Kodesh? Knesset Yisrael ben zugech. It doesn't say Yidden, Jews. There is a spirit of Knesset Yisrael that emerges on Shabbos. That will be Ben Zugech. And that's what each individual Jew could experience on Shabbos. When we recognize on Shabbos, I am more than me. I am more than me. I am actually, for a few shining hours, who I actually really am. And I have the capacity to be plugged into that level of consciousness that goes far beyond whether the cholent was salted enough and whether or not, my kids woke me up for my Shabbos shtuyot. I'm not a person, b'chlal. Shabbos is, and this is what it's supposed to be. This is what Shabbos is supposed to be. Amar la HaKadosh Baruch Hu Knesset Yisrael hu ben zugech. Ukishem shakadosh baruch hu shu hamelech mamtin laboi shel hakala. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the king, sits and waits for Shabbos Malchus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yoshev u'Mitzapeh. Kamoikin kol Yehudi b'asher hu. So every Yid, mamtin lehiskalas hadavar, waits for this emergence, for this moment when he can begin to taste for a few moments in the week his essence, which raises our spirits. Shabbos is Makar HaBracha. Once we catch a glimpse of it, then you journey back into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, operating with the klalius of Knesset Yisrael from the standpoint of this particular individual, which is all of us, with our little lives and our little narratives and our little stories and circumstances, the things we're struggling with at this particular moment in history, etc. That's good. That's during the week. Shabbos is beyond this. Shabbos is absolutely beyond this. Va'aymer, and then we sing, Boyi Kala, Boyi Kala. We're inviting the emergence of this ruach, of this spirit. Hashem should bless us that we should mamish feel Shabbos. We should know what these are basic. This is Aleph Beis, and 99% of Frum Yidden who keep Shabbos don't know anything about this. They don't know anything about anything most of the time. They know a lot of halacha. They know what to do and sugyas, but they don't know Yiddishkeit. It's very sad. People don't have hasagas like this. People don't think of themselves as a spark in an ocean of Knesset Yisrael, but who thinks like that? I think I'm part of Babav, and this one's part of Ger, and this, and I'm Reb Shal Halter's people, or this one's people. Who thinks that none of this matters? It's shtuyot, agabe shtuyot. To be plugged into mamish, what we are, what Shabbos is, what Hashem wants, what Yiddishkeit is. What is chus? And it's up to us, as people who are drawn and attracted to this kind of teaching, to absorb as much of it as we can and to find ways, and it's going to be unique to each and every person, to spread these to other people, because people are dying out there. I promise you, I spent all of my life talking to Yidden, teenagers, the boys, the girls, the parents. People are desperate for pneumias. They're parched. They're desperate. And it's not a one-man show, and it's not a two-man show or a three-man show. It's every single Yid whose heart has been touched by the light of the Baal Shem Tov, find a way to bring this to other people. May change a life. Absolutely change, and maybe even save a life. What a privilege. L'chaim, l'chaim.
מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני